Hello. Today we have the first of 3 videos about the participants in the SubQuery network. We're going to talk about indexes and go into the detail about the functionalities that they represent and how you could potentially become one. Indexes do all the hard work in SubQuery. They run infrastructure, they manage that infrastructure, they monitor that infrastructure, and they maintain the uptime of the entire network. In exchange, essentially they will be rewarded in our SubQuery token. In a way, you can already become an indexer today. Today you can take our codebase, you can deploy a node service and a query service, and you can index your own data and run that yourself. It's all open source and it's all working today. So because monitoring, scaling and managing production infrastructure is so very difficult, so very hard, ask us, we do it ourselves. It's why indexes will be rewarded handsomely and they'll play such an important part in the SubQuery network. So, firstly, after indexing data, indexers must stake SubQuery tokens against a particular SubQuery project that they've got to provide a service for in order to become discoverable. And we'll talk about discoverability later. This means essentially, though, that they have skin in the game, that they are invested in the SubQuery network in order to provide a service and earn rewards from it. In the simplest terms, indexes will advertise a price that consumers will accept and they must pay in order for every query to be accepted and to be answered by the indexer. So consumers will pay via state channels, and that query fee, after the successful response of that query, will go into a large pool, a revenue pool specific to that SubQuery project. At the end of what we call a staking era, which is 28 days, we take that SubQuery project revenue pool, so the revenue pool for that particular SubQuery project, and we split it up across each indexer that has participated in that project. We plan to use something called the Cobbs-Douglas production function to determine how we split up that query fee revenue pool. So essentially what it means is that the query fee revenue that an indexer, indexer I, can receive for the SubQuery project J is defined by this formula, where revenue is the total revenue for the request for project J, and then sigma ij is the number of requests provided by indexer I on that particular project J, and sigma j is obviously the number of requests over that entire SubQuery project. So essentially the proportion of the requests of that project that the indexer I answered. And then it's multiplied by the proportion of the staked amount across that SubQuery project. So theta ij is the staked amount by indexer I for project J, and then theta j is the staked amount across project J. So essentially what it means is that we look at both the staked amount and the work done. The beauty of this equation in our view is that the rational indexer must maintain a level of both to be rewarded handsomely. They must maintain a stable level of staked SubQuery tokens relative to the work that they do in order to receive optimal revenue. And as a result, we don't need to enforce arbitrary staking requirements, because indexers are incentivized to keep some skin in the game. If an indexer did a lot of work but had no staked amount, they would earn less than what they would do if they had a better proportional staked amount but did less work. That's the beauty of the Cobb-Douglas production function. It's self-incentivized indexers to hold and maintain skin in the game, to maintain stake. So, if an indexer is caught misbehaving, which is a very major issue, and that could be like providing invalid data or not indexing correctly, if they're cheating, they're liable to have their staked SubQuery token slashed. And as a result, with that staked SubQuery token being burned effectively, the portion of rewards that they're eligible will massively decrease. So it's in all means they want to avoid being punished, because the total potential reward that they can earn is much lower. And at this stage, what we do intend to do is to limit the disincentive imposed on a SubQuery project So they will not affect the index's staking amount on another subquery project. So if you fail to index one project, you probably won't be punished for the other projects that you manage. So we have staking amount by indexes. The next thing is all about index delegation. And essentially, because the amount of revenue that you can earn as an index is proportional essentially to the staked amount, we want to allow other subquery token holders, like let's say myself, who are not an indexer, to participate in this and to help increase indexers' query fee revenue by delegating their own subquery token to support or sponsor an indexer. And that's what indexer delegation is all about. So by increasing the portion of staked subquery token that an index is using, you can help increase the portion of revenue that the indexer receives. And a bigger proportion of those revenue will mean obviously more rewards. So how do they attract delegation? Well, obviously indexes will advertise a query fee revenue share rate. And what that means is that a particular rate of all the revenue or the rewards that an indexer receives will be split amongst the delegators. So let's say an indexer's query fee revenue share rate is 10%. 10% of the rewards that indexer receives for the work that they've done, 10% of that will be divvied up into the delegator pool and then will be split among all the delegators, obviously in proportion to how much they've delegated. Delegators will only receive indexer query fee revenue or split from that when they were delegating to the indexer for the entire staking period. And for example, what this means is that if they join a staking era mid-cycle, or if they leave a staking era mid-cycle, they won't be eligible for any revenue rewards within that cycle. So it kind of disincentivises jumping between indexes because you have to be a part of the indexer delegation pool for the entire staking cycle. It doesn't punish you in terms of you have a cooldown period, but effectively you do have a cooldown period in terms of the remainder of that cycle. So if an indexer wishes to decrease the query fee revenue share rate, they must also advertise that they're going to decrease that number for the entire staking cycle. And what that means is it gives delegators plenty of time to run the numbers and to figure out if that decrease is going to hurt their profitability or the rewards, and therefore change who they're delegating to accordingly. On the other hand, indexers don't have to advertise an increase to that query fee revenue share rate because they want to encourage investment as soon as possible, and we don't want to punish them from doing that, right? I think from a delegator's point of view, if you are starting to earn more in terms of the revenue share rate, it's not an issue. Indexer discovery. So for consumers to discover and select indexes in the SubQuery network, we plan to implement a discovery process, and that will be based on something similar to a Academia DHT. We're still working on this. But essentially what this DHT network will provide is information about the SubQuery projects. So hashes for each project, project hashes for each indexer, so what projects that indexer provides data for. And under that indexer, it'll list the endpoint URLs, the current block that they've indexed, and the summary of the latest service reports. And this is a really important part. So the latest service reports will ideally be provided by consumers when unlocking their state channels, their micropayments. And inside that service performance report will be performance-related data, latency, uptime, the speed they got that data back. And by basically aggregating and combining that, what we get is a picture of which indexes are most performant. And so what that means is that our discovery process can prioritize indexes that are performant. And we can route requests to indexes that are faster, have better uptime, have lower latency. And that's really important for our network, right? Additionally, indexes can restrict the geographical area that they serve via IP address whitelisting or allow listing. And what that means is that we can encourage indexes to, rather than 2 or 3 large indexes covering the entire globe, what we want to essentially move towards is like a content distribution network. So a CDN in Web 2 terms, where you have lots of small indexes providing very localized service, because that's what we are. We are a CDN. And as a result, we encourage indexes to distribute their network and distribute their indexes around the world to be closer to consumers. So those consumers will have better service. And all this process will be in our discovery network, and a network discovery process. So, in conclusion, indexes are the backbone of the SubQuery network. They play an incredibly important part, and they will be sufficiently incentivized and rewarded for playing that part. So I hope this has helped you today understand all about indexes, how they work, what an indexer can expect to do, and how this will work from the network. Thank you.